Welcome to the good, the bad and the ugly of gaming.
I am your host, Sir Danka, and please join me as we cover a few examples of this phenomenon.
First of all, the good.
Games that accomplish the good category require a great challenge upon great mechanics and immersive atmosphere. A perfect example of this would be, but of course, Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey.
An atmospheric masterpiece giving a great challenge in return.
Truly, a work of art.
The bad.
The games that get set into the bad category doesn't necessarily have to be an all-round bad game, but usually offers such promise and delivers a dog poo on your doorstep. I'm looking at you, Resident Evil 3.
The ugly.
Now the ugly, but of course, usually burn my hand off ass swapping gun. Back to the good we go. The good once again. Oh, fuck. I did it again!
It's hard to imagine what a simple, original launch title can do for a console. Halo Combat Evolved not only was a success, but completely exceeded expectation. It did not take long for Halo to be one of the most talked about things in the gaming industry. And while not the first FPS to appear on consoles, it welcomed it with such grace and clarity. And come 2003, a PC port of Halo would arrive, giving players an opportunity to play on LAN or dedicated servers with each other. Everything was looking up for Halo, and by this point, you could tell that Bungie had truly created what was one of the biggest gaming phenomena at the time. But it would be overshadowed by something bigger, something better, something with more heart, passion, dedication, and would change the way first-person shooters will play out still to this very day. And this thing was gonna be the biggest thing the Xbox ever did. Halo 2. Not necessarily the game to popularize shooters on console, but definitely the one to revolutionize it. And if you thought Halo 1 was revolutionary, you are dead wrong. Hello everyone and welcome back to GameTalk, where we talk about games. Halo Combat Evolved would welcome the first-person shooter genre to console, and while extremely iconic, the game nowadays can be very rough around the edges, especially towards the final 4 missions of the game. But you know what? It is still a good thing to go back to. But does the sequel manage to capture what the first game did really well and improve on it, or did it flop? Like my first 5 marriages. The 9th of November 2004 would mark the next entry into the Halo series, Halo 2. My collector's edition steelbook I've had since 2004 has rusted. I might need a tetanus shot. Just like Halo 1, Halo 2 is very special to me. And not just special to me, but is probably the most loved Halo game in the series. And if you ask a Halo fan what their favorite game in the series was, they would most likely respond with Halo 2. And why is that the case? Is it a nostalgia thing? Is this game genuinely the best the Halo series has to offer? Being the fan favorite and the most sold game on the original Xbox with nearly 8.5 million sales, that's really surprising when learning that the development of Halo 2 was a complete disaster. Halo 2's development is quite infamous for being a mess. It was so bad in fact that when the barely stable gameplay demo of Halo 2 dropped for the first time at E3 2003, the whole graphics and physics engines, the whole project was scrapped, and they started all over again. Like my second marriage. Now, Halo was never meant to have a sequel, but the success of the game ensured that not making a follow-up would be a terrible decision on Bungie and Microsoft's behalf. But Halo 2 was gonna be the most ambitious gaming project yet. Bungie wanted to blow everyone away with what this new installment of Halo had to offer, including brand new concepts never done in gaming before, massive scale environments, and even ideas lost during Halo 1's development. Due to lack of leadership, key members at Bungie leaving, and the Xbox not being able to handle the engine that was built for the game, they had to settle for what they could do, scrapping all the ingenious ideas this game was supposed to have, and the members at Bungie for months upon months were exhausting themselves, working constantly to make Halo 2 be still ambitious in its own right, but at the same time stable, and it barely achieved that. Looking at this game today, was it worth it? Did Bungie really need to put themselves through hell to deliver this amazing project? Well, there's only one way to find out, and quite frankly, I'm really excited for this. I can't wait to revisit it. I could just sing a song. Ladies and gents, get ready, get set, and keep your socks on. First of all, the menu. Gotta say, quite disappointing when compared to the execution of the first. It's not bad though. It shows the futuristic city of New Mombasa in East Africa, with the Covenant ship hovering over it. And fair enough, the first part of the game does take place in this location, but it really doesn't beat how Halo 1's menu showcased the game's location, as well as showed how big this anomaly was. It's not bad, nor is it something to gloat over. There are more important things to focus on, like my 6th marriage, but we can't stall for too long. Time is money and I need to afford the new console, so on to the story. But instantly, you'll notice while Halo 1 had a mysterious and triumphant theme to the story, Halo 2 immediately takes a dark turn. The first thing we see is what's left of Halo after its destruction at the end of the last game. Next to it is High Charity, the Covenant's holy city, where we see an elite getting berated for his actions in the High Council.
There was only one ship.
One? Are you sure?
Yes. They called it the Pillar of Autumn.
This elite is known as Thel Vardami, the supreme commander of the entire Covenant fleet that chased the humans to Halo. Since Halo is a deep religious object within the Covenant, his failure to safeguard it convinced the prophets, the Hierarchs of the Covenant, to sentence him to torture and death for his heresy.
Soon the great journey shall begin. But when it does, the weight of your heresy will stay your feet, and you shall be left behind.
Now the words "the great journey" get tossed around in this game by the Covenant. It means something really crucial to the story, but at this point we really don't know what it is yet. But I think it's fantastic that we get an inside look on the Covenant's mindset. Last game they weren't really focused on, and they just seemed like multiple alien species grouped together, trying to gain power. But now they seem more like a religion. But that's not extreme enough, it's more like an ultra powerful, ultra superior cult. We then cut to Cairo Station, one of many space stations guarding Earth, where Master Chief has had an all-new glow-up with the Mjolnir Mark 6 armor. We see him, Sergeant Major Johnson, and Commander Miranda Keyes, Captain Keyes' daughter, attend an award ceremony as the Covenant show up at Earth and start boarding Cairo Station. And before you know it, you're into gameplay quicker than Keemstar on coke. Fortunately for you, you aren't given an unloaded handgun this time, and fully loaded weapons are there for you to equip. Unlike you, Captain Keyes, you prick. You deserve to die. One thing I instantly noticed about Halo 2 was the movement. Not only has movement speed slightly increased, but jumping seems way less floaty. Halo 1 had a weird momentum system and unresponsive jumping that would allow for the odd platforming section to be a hassle. But here, movement and jumping feels much more natural, like a fetus would be able to pull it off. Which is good, because you are playing as a super soldier at the end of the day, not a barrel of monkey shit. Another thing I noticed is that the enemies seem way more trigger happy this time around. They'll take much shorter breaks in between suppressing fire, and honestly, I love this. More thinking does come into play during combat. You can't always run through a group of enemies guns blazing, because that probably won't end well. Switching between cover, sneaking around corners, finding another route, these things are all encouraged during gameplay. It feels like realistic, yet futuristic, strategical combat. Interactivity with NPCs and environment has improved as well. One neat feature is the ability to trade weapons with friendly AI without the risk of killing them and sacrificing your own life for Pakistan. Hijacking vehicles and planting grenades in them or kicking the enemy AI off is a cool new method of vehicular combat, but goes without saying that enemies can do the same thing to you. And even complete novelty features has been added, like the AI saying funny lines of dialogue during gameplay.
See this look? It's terror!
Marine, can I give you permission to bitch? Chief, you may be the dumbest, best man I've ever met.
Hey, you making a sandwich? Well, give me one too.
The game doesn't take itself seriously, and it's wonderful. Though, I don't appreciate the change to the health and shielding system. For starters, since Master Chief's armor is a lot newer, the shield will now recharge extremely quicker. But that's not the problem though. The problem is the health system itself. Health is not represented by any meter or number, so when your shields are down, you could die at any time, there's no telling. And when your shields recharge, your health recharges along with it. That doesn't seem too bad on first glance, but I miss how intense Halo 1 got when you only had 1 bar of health left, making every enemy encounter a potentially lethal one. That feeling is non-existent here, as when your shields recharge, you're safe, no matter how much you were damaged when your shields were down. This allowing for any tense or cautious gameplay. Aside from that, the combat does represent the last game's combat really well, with the fast and sporadic gameplay, the levels designed with the various types of cover in place, the smart and tough enemies, and improves upon the things that could use an improvement, such as the tougher enemies, and the movement smoother than James Charles's ass.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
The missions and level design follow a similar formula. The first level is basically a run and gun sci-fi shooter in a space station, and the next level where you touch down on Earth is where it gets more expansive. Gameplay still constantly shifts from style to style, exploration, stealth, defense, offense, vehicular battles, etc, etc. But unfortunately the levels aren't as open as before. Mission 2 Halo and Mission 4 the Silent Cartographer in Halo 1, I wouldn't exactly say they were open world, but they were expansive and would allow you to complete objectives in any order you wanted. While in Halo 2 it's much more linear. It isn't a big problem as Halo 2 has really cool level design. Each mission has something unique to offer with its gameplay and visuals, and doesn't resort to repetition. And a lot of missions would have places that you wouldn't even think to check, and these areas will usually reward you for finding them with power weapons, supplies, Easter eggs, secret items, and the fucking scarab gun, what the fuck? But at the same time, I would definitely like to see these missions contain a bit more freedom of exploration. I want to feel like I'm in the world this game showcases to me, not walking on one of those automatic airport walkways. I actually want to touch on something I didn't go too in depth on in Halo 1, and that's vehicular gameplay. Halo 1 did it pretty well, but it seemed as if it wasn't too big of a focus. Aside from a mobile turret, Halo 1 only had 4 vehicles. Halo 2 expanded on its vehicle variety, as well as vehicle function as well. Vehicle physics in the last game would be the most unpredictable thing ever, especially the Ghost. The Ghost in Halo 1 was ridiculously hard to control, with every bump on the path making this thing flip around so much, it sends itself back to the year 2020 on Toby Jizzle's nose. Now vehicles feel a lot more natural to use, and they're controlled by using up on the analog stick to accelerate and the camera controls steering. And what I love about Halo 2's vehicular gameplay is the choice. Most of the time you get the choice of which vehicle or which part of the vehicle you'd like to use, or if you want, even go on foot. If you're a fucking idiot, fellow AI will join you, so it's your choice if you want to drive, use the turrets, or the passenger seat. The option is there. Vehicle variety goes from light vehicles such as the Ghost, a one-seater hover bike with a boost function, moderate vehicles such as the Warthog and Spectre, allowing for a driver's seat, passenger seats, and a gunner. On the Warthog specifically, the gunner seat can alternate between a machine gun turret or occasionally a railgun turret. Heavy vehicles like the Scorpion and Wraith, which are tank-like vehicles with slow and clunky movement, but will have massive damage output and be able to absorb a lot of damage as well. And aircrafts like the Banshee, which is a one-seater aircraft shooting automatic plasma rounds and fuel rod bombs, with the ability to boost and an evade feature which you'll find comes in handy during every aerial firefight. And then you have some non-drivable vehicles like the Shadow, the Pelican, Phantom, and Scarab, which is the coolest thing ever. But one thing to notice is that a pattern that the devs of Halo have followed is that every human vehicle is named after animals such as Warthog, Pelican, and Covenant vehicles are named after supernatural entities such as Ghost, Phantom, Banshee, etc. Nothing too much to focus on, but is quite neat and gives my official neat stamp of approval. Yep, that's a thing now. In terms of gunplay, not only has the arsenal of weapons at your disposal been increased, but the classic weapons have come with improvements, monetization, and balancing. First of all, shooting enemies has never been more satisfying. The weapon sounds combined with the special effects and the way the bullets bounce off the enemies, splattering blood everywhere. The gunplay is straight out addictive. Maybe that has to do with weapons will now have visible recoil, making you focus on shooting enemies as well as weapon control. Balancing comes into play with the weapons, as now weapons like the shotgun will have much less range and will not be as easy to come across. The pistol trades in its damage, range, and accuracy for a faster fire rate. The plasma pistol now feels like a secondary strategical tool rather than a high damage suppression tool, and most balancing was done due to this feature I have never seen done before in any game. Dual wielding. Now I know, don't get me wrong, games back then and still to this day have dual wielding weapons, but not like Halo 2. The way that dual wielding works is that all weapons in the game are either dual wieldable or not dual wieldable, which means that any dual wieldable weapon can be combined with any other weapon of that class you find, not just two of the same weapon. This makes not only for some cool combinations, but strategy does come into play here. A plasma pistol and magnum pistol can be used as an EMP and a cap off at the end. A plasma rifle and SMG can be the ultimate elite stunning tool, which makes this feature not just novelty but strategy. And at the end of the day, it doesn't make non-dual wieldable weapons inferior at all. Some new weapons in your arsenal includes the SMG, which is the assault rifle's replacement with the same fire rate and magazine size but less damage, but is dual wieldable, increasing the damage output but increasing recoil massively. The battle rifle, which is the substitute for last game's pistol and is a 3-round burst mid-range key weapon. The Covenant Carbine, which is a mid-range Covenant substitute, it does more damage than the battle rifle but is semi-automatic instead. The beam rifle, which is a Covenant sniper rifle, which does the same amount of damage, but instead of reloading, the beam rifle can overheat if shot too quickly. The plasma rifle is still here, but the brute plasma rifle has been added. It's a higher damage, higher fire rate, but lower overheat time substitute. The brute shot, which is a ricochet style grenade launcher with a bayonet blade, dealing higher melee damage. And then you have the fuel rod gun, which was in Halo 1 but was not usable, and is a less damage but more ammo rocket launcher. And now finally usable, the energy sword. Used by elites in Halo 1, the energy sword is an extremely high damage output weapon that will kill practically any enemy in one hit. But compensating for that with, obviously it's a melee weapon, but does have a lunge feature, which makes the energy sword about as deadly as a cigarette addiction. Not only have more ranks been included for each species of the Covenant, but they now look a whole lot more detailed and threatening. You can now tell that grunts wear respirators, jackals now look a whole lot more beastly rather than robotic, and they have a whole new rank as well, jackal snipers. While these guys don't have shields, they wield beam rifles that on higher difficulties will end you before you can say the words. Some new ranks of the elite include the Ultra, which is the strongest version of a regular elite, the Counselor, which is a cool redesign of the Ultra, the Ranger, which are tough sons of bitches wielding dual plasma rifles, and have jetpacks making it harder to shoot them, and the most threatening elite, the Honor Guard. The Honor Guards don't show up too often, but are present in areas near Prophet Hierarchs. They wield plasma rifles or energy swords and travel in groups. The Hunters are back, and while their design doesn't look as scary as before, they're now much taller and a lot harder to kill. If you knew what you were doing, a Hunter could be killed with one pistol shot in Halo 1. Here, Hunters will only take damage on their weak spots and take a lot to bring them down. But there are some new faces to the party as well. Drones, known also as Yanmis, are weak but extremely quick flying bug-like creatures traveling in swarms. It doesn't take a lot to kill them, but you'll never encounter them in a small group. If you see one or hear buzzing of wings, expect to see a whole swarm of them. Drones can also attack you on vehicles, stick to walls, and will deal high damage from all angles. So be prepared to take cover, and be prepared to throw your chair when they kill you. Brutes, or by their species name Jiralhanae, the Brutes make their first appearance towards the final act of the game, and by their name, they are one of the Covenant's most brutal and toughest soldiers. Their health is extremely high, accompanied by their damage output. They travel in pairs of 2 or more, and when killing one, be prepared to run, because the other will instantly drop their weapons and berserk, moving faster than any other enemy, and will use melee attacks in rapid succession with massive damage output. Headshots are the best course of action with the Brutes, but it is not easy to pull it off with the speeds they can get up to. Some ranks of the Brutes include the Miner, wielding plasma rifles or carbines, the Brute Captain, which will look roughly the same but with a red flag, and will wield the Brute Shot, dealing great collateral damage. Then there's the Brute Honor Guard. Due to their impenetrable helmet, headshots are about as useful as milking a cow by violently pulling on its tail. To make a long story short, a shorter way to explain the Brutes would be...
Monkey.
Sun Shium, aka the Prophets. The Prophets are the leaders of the Covenant, intelligent beings who founded the secrets of Halo and led their Covenant in their battles against any heretics. There are 3 Prophet Hierarchs: the Prophet of Regret, Mercy, and Truth. You only encounter one Prophet during gameplay, but they shoot fuel rod beams and have impenetrable shields around their throne. The only way to kill them is to board them and do melee damage. The Prophet is not what you have to worry about though. Where there are Prophets, there are also countless amounts of Honor Guard elites protecting them, making the job much harder. Yeah, apart from the fact that a boss fight ends with you just punching it, is the most pathetic thing I've seen ever since I looked in that mirror that one time. The story in Halo 2 is something that I see as a massive improvement over the first game, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I'll go over it more in a bit, but right now I want to focus on what I believe to be the most interesting and immersive part of Halo 2's story, the Arbiter. Remember at the start of the game, that Supreme Commander Elite, Thel Vadami? Well, he gets stripped and tortured in front of the whole Covenant, and that's the last we see of him, until a few missions in, where we see him getting led by the Brutes and their chieftain, presumably to his execution, where they leave him in front of 2 or 3 Prophet Hierarchs.
The Council decided to have you hung by your entrails and your corpse paraded through the city. But ultimately, the terms of your execution are up to me.
I am already dead.
Indeed.
We can see here that he's on his knees and has accepted the fact that he deserves what's coming to him. But the Prophets ensure him that they know he's no heretic. To compensate for his mistakes, instead of execution, they assign him a new rank, the rank of the Arbiter. This rank of the Covenant is only given to one soldier at a time, and the duties as the Arbiter includes tasks that no other will perform, suicidal and perilous tasks that will ensure his death if execution was not given. And yes, you play as the Arbiter. It's not just a few side missions here and there, but the Arbiter is considered a main main character in this game alongside Master Chief. And the 6 out of 13 main missions where the Arbiter is playable give you opportunities to give you an inside look on the Covenant and their mindset, and to fight alongside Covenant soldiers for the first time. And he doesn't play exactly like Master Chief either. While Master Chief has a flashlight, which is used very occasionally, the Arbiter has temporary active camouflage that can turn practically any combat situation into a stealth situation. And that doesn't make any part of the game easier either. It only lasts a number of seconds before depleting and recharging, so transitioning from cover to cover, walking past enemies, is a tense gameplay style, but once again, it's optional. You can take the missions from any approach you want. Stealth, heavy offense, or... Yeah, did I mention this game is broken? Yeah, Halo 2 isn't exactly the most stable game in the world. I've heard modders say that this game is practically held together by duct tape and sticks. It's not too noticeable, but you'll get the occasional vehicle or player launch. Sword lunging can be done from any distance if done correctly. Any weapon animations can be halted by using the X button, causing for some really broken exploits, such as melee attacks being done faster, and cancelling sword lunge to fly over enemies. Vehicles sometimes have a mind of their own. It's too easy to go out of bounds, and with no death barriers, you can practically do anything you want, even achieving loading on checkpoint skips to make everything kind of, broken. And you know what, the out of bounds glitch is actually quite fun, and I can forgive that. But probably the worst offender in terms of the bugs is the inconsistent checkpoints. Sometimes checkpoints won't activate for half a mission, sometimes they'll happen 3 times in the same spot. There's no telling what sets them off. And Halo 2 is quite hard as well. If there's a part of the mission you're struggling on, you better pray to Bill Gates that the checkpoint was activated recently, otherwise the game will make you so mad that you set fire to an orphanage. On to the story. It is phenomenal. For a multitude of reasons, of course. Characters will have more screen time, which puts them on a higher emotional level with the player. The pacing of events is quite faster, and dialogue sounds much more real. Now, there is a lot to go over, so if you want to get through the video quicker, just skip to the time on screen. Going over the events though, after finding Earth, getting bombarded by Earth defenses, the Covenant retreat through a portal in which the humans follow. This leads them to Halo. But Halo was destroyed, right? Well, this is another Halo, and we come to find out there are 7 of them. The humans learn that the Prophet of Regret plans to activate Halo. When Master Chief kills the Prophet, the Covenant are in a massive crisis, and the elites are getting suspicious of the Prophets and what they've been doing behind the scenes. The Prophets give Arbiter a task in which all others have failed. Deactivate the barrier guarding the sacred icon to begin the Great Journey. After deactivating the barrier, releasing the Flood, and reaching the Index, Arbiter finds out the Prophets ordered his assassination, and the brutes send him to the abyss at the bottom of the library. But surprisingly ends up being still alive and saved by what is possibly the most terrifying thing in the Halo universe: the Gravemind. A Gravemind is the final stage in the life cycle of the Flood. It has complete control over all Flood forms and is more intelligent than anything in the known universe. It has captured the Master Chief and the Arbiter and analyzes them, saying that the Arbiter is the deluded one while Master Chief is the concluded one, meaning that the Arbiter is not aware of the situation at hand. Throughout the game, we get told of the Great Journey. Putting all the pieces together, it seems that the Covenant believe that the rings, when activated, will send them into the divine beyond, joining their gods and receiving salvation. Activating the rings is their great journey. These are just lies the Covenant have been told by their prophets, and if they go through with the prophets' plan, all will perish. Time is running out, and the Gravemind, for its sake and theirs, sends the Master Chief to the holy city of High Charity to hunt down the Prophet of Truth, and sends the Arbiter to the control room of Halo to stop whoever activates it. These last few missions is when shit really starts hitting the fan. Master Chief has invaded the Covenant's holy city, and instantly, something seems off. The Covenant are fighting each other. You're in the middle of a chaotic war zone between all species of the Covenant. Making your way through this grueling war zone, you'll find the Prophet of Mercy in his dying breath tells us that the Prophet of Truth is on his way to Earth to finish what the Covenant started. Truth is heading for a Forerunner ship in the center of the city, which will take him to Earth, and we board the ship just as it takes off, but leaving Cortana in High Charity's system in case of remote detonation.
You get to Earth, good luck.
I'll run through with truth.
Don't make a girl a promise.
If you know you can't keep it.
On Arbiter's side of the journey, instead of a chaotic war zone, it's actually much more of a depressing tone. Arbiter gets teleported to a cliffside near the control room, accompanied by really depressing music. Walking through the cliffside, you'll find dying and dead elites and the brutes shooting their corpses, where Arbiter now realizes that his whole life has been a lie. Tartarus, the chieftain of the brutes, shows up to the control room with Commander Keys to activate Halo. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and an unexpected alliance is formed: the elites and humans. At the control room, Arbiter asks the monitor what Halo is, and what happened to those who built it. The monitor explains that Halo is a weapon that kills potential Flood hosts, and the creators of the rings activated them during a war with the Flood. The Forerunners died to save the known universe. Tartarus refuses to accept the truth and activates Halo. A decent enough boss fight happens, and the firing of Halo gets stopped just in time. The game has two sides of the ending. On Arbiter's side, Arbiter and the humans are at a truce. The monitor informs us that all the other Halo rings are ready for remote activation from a place called the Ark. On Master Chief's side, the ship containing both the Prophet of Truth and Spartan 117 is above Earth. And you know what, I'll just play it.
Got a new contact, unknown classification.
It isn't one of ours. Take it out.
This is Spartan 117.
Can anyone hear me? Over.
Isolate that signal. Master Chief, you mind telling me what you're doing on that ship?
Sir, finishing this fight.
The story was so intriguing, so immersive, and it ends on a cliffhanger. If there's one thing that really infuriates me about Halo 2 is the cliffhanger ending. As the story is leading up to something big, the game just ends. It's like your Uber driver pulling up and you get to his car and he just speeds off and flips you off. Knowing that there are major events about to occur and knowing that the conclusion of the whole story, you won't be able to experience it, is so infuriating. And it makes you want to spend every penny you have on a flux capacitor and a DeLorean to travel back in time and erasing human history as we know it. Okay, aside from being blue-balled at the end, this game was an amazing experience. Gameplay was great, level design was great, atmosphere was great, story was great. There is a lot to look forward to here. What I especially love about the story is that since the main character doesn't have too much depth to him, they added a secondary main character where they did focus on growth as a character and being relatable. I'm going to use the words said by the YouTuber Late Night Gaming. This may sound weird, but the Arbiter is the most human character in the Halo universe. I'd recommend checking out his video, but the Arbiter is a character we see at his very best and his very worst. After he gets betrayed by his allies and realizes his whole life is a lie, you feel betrayed with him. He's definitely the most empathetic character in the series. And even Master Chief has had some work done. His lines are delivered with much more confidence, his actions are way more badass, like when he flies through space with a bomb destroying a Covenant ship, and even his armor makes him seem more like a super soldier this time around. Halo 1 made him look like a cyborg, honestly. But in terms of visuals, the game does look up to par at time, especially with the environments and the character models, but cutscenes still seem a bit awkward at times. I don't know, the animation seems off. It's not too much of a big deal at all, but it would be nice if there was a remaster. Wait a minute. Halo 2 Anniversary. How could I forget? Fun fact, Halo 2 Anniversary has never been its own game. The only way to play it is in the Master Chief Collection, which in fairness did release 10 years after Halo 2. But Halo 2 Anniversary, it learns upon the small problems with Halo 1 Anniversary and improves. Classic mode is the exact same as the original, and not an inferior port. Pressing the back button doesn't just switch the visuals, but the sounds as well. All sounds have been re-recorded for H2A to make everything sound more crisper and sharper. And probably the greatest thing about this remaster is the cutscenes. 343 Industries, the developers, got a separate studio to create the cutscenes combining CGI with live action. And holy shit, they look good. Woo! I think it's safe to say that these cutscenes are probably the best visuals I've seen in any media format ever. Now don't get me wrong, I would do a full review of Halo 2 Anniversary, but yeah, same thing as last time, I'm a cunt. Nevertheless though, Halo 2 makes the good list and gets an 8.5 out of 10. Obviously a major improvement upon the first game, but as the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and the health system being changed is actually quite upsetting. Yeah, that and the major fuck you at the end of the story, but aside from that, this game is timeless and there's plenty of replayability here. Not to mention multiplayer. I didn't even go in depth on multiplayer last time, but I wanted to this time merely for the fact of how iconic it is. Halo 2 took advantage of something completely foreign to consoles at this point: Xbox Live. If you had broadband internet connection to your Xbox, you could play Halo 2 with people on a global scale, resulting in this game to set the precedent for all shooters in the future to follow. Character personalization, online ranking, private lobbies, social matchmaking, etc. It had game modes ranging from your standard Slayer, kill opponents mode, from small arenas to huge scale environments with vehicles, to objective style game modes like Capture the Flag, Oddball, my personal favorite, Assault, King of the Hill, Territories, combined combined with the huge selection of maps, it makes Halo 2 the godfather of online shooters on console. And every online shooter you play today has principles carried down from Halo 2. But as great as Halo 2 was, and how classic Halo 1 was, there is always a final piece to the puzzle. There is always a cherry on top of the cake. And with all great things, they must come to an end.
Negative, sir. I think we lost him.
Not yet.
Ladies and gents, it's currently 5:52 AM and I haven't slept yet. What's wrong with me? Many things, but that's not what I'm talking about now. I want to thank everyone who's listening to this, as you've made it through, as of yet, the longest episode of GameTalk. If you liked the video, drop a like. And if you haven't subscribed already, I encourage you to do so. Thank you all so much once again, and I will talk to you before you know it. See you later.